Today is Father's Day, and all I'm seeing is Sunscreen Gate. He said that out loud, and they kept it in the video. I am just floored.
Sunscreen Gate. Isn't that just so juicy? We're all just loving Sunscreen Gate at the moment.
The Viollette Lean Screen claims it has an SPF of 50 plus, but we tested it at an SPF of 4.
Obviously, I've seen all of the press about the choice testing, and I guess I just wanted to give you a bit of an understanding of what's happened, how this could happen, why we're disputing these claims.
Today is Father's Day, and all I'm seeing is Sunscreen Gate all over TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube. I hopped on after church to Jen Love's. She does a Sunday beauty report video that she just streams live. And today was all about sunscreen. So I hopped on because I was like, why is she taking an entire video for sunscreens? And then I realized it was those TikToks that I was scrolling past that had to do with choice sunscreen review report that came out that I had just scrolled past because it was in Australia. And I thought, oh, it doesn't have anything to do with me here in the United States. But yes, it does. Y'all, are you seeing the controversy and the back and forth around the ultraviolet sunscreen brand? Let's dive into this. This is going to be my initial thoughts. And if we need to make a part 2, because I think more is going to come to light. So let's talk about what has happened in the past 3 days and what we may be seeing moving forward, and how does this affect sunscreens? How does this affect the efficacy of sunscreens? We'll talk about testing briefly here. I am going to recommend that you go watch Jen Love's live stream. I will link it down below because she has excellent information and she has done a lot more research than I have. I'm also going to put Lab Muffin Beauty Science, Michelle, her Instagram, I think it's a reel she did. I'm going to post that below because she has a lot of information. I'm also going to link Dr. Julian Sass came out with a statement. I'm going to link his statement down below as well if you want to dive into Sunscreen Gate, y'all. The drama. Hi, I'm Sean, Melanoma Mom, if we haven't met before. I review sunscreens every week to help save you money and your budget, as well as find the sunscreen that works for your skin. I am a melanoma skin cancer survivor, and I have been now wearing sunscreen and reviewing sunscreen for about 4 years now. Sunscreen is always under fire, isn't it? People are either like, hey, it causes cancer. No, it doesn't cause cancer. You should only use mineral sunscreens that are safer. Chemical sunscreens are also safe. There is this invisible line within the sunscreen community that confuses the average sunscreen consumer wearer. I completely understand because I get confused by it too as well. From what I can tell, in a brief nutshell, here's what popped off. About 3 days ago, Choice Consumer Reports, okay, which is, if you're here in the States, you're probably familiar with Consumer Reports, which is a magazine that's put out yearly that reviews cars, appliances. They also come out with a sunscreen report every year. So the EU has their own Consumer Reports magazine that people go to that's called Choice, to look up before they make major purchases, okay? And also, evidently, they do sunscreen reports every year. And this year they tested 20 sunscreens, and only 16 passed the test of meeting the SPF number that was on their bottle. There was a sunscreen, I think, called Lean Screen by Ultraviolet. We have different ones here in the States, but this brand is an Australian-based brand. They had to create different sunscreens over here in the United States because of our FDA, our regulating body for medications. So they have different formulas in Australia. One of their most popular mattifying sunscreens, called Lean Screen, rated an SPF of 5 rather than the SPF of 50 on the label, which blew everyone's mind because it is such a popular brand. Many use it. The founders are Australian. They use this sunscreen on their kids, and it's a widely trusted brand. It's been around for a really long time. So when Choice came out with this report, evidently back in March, they gave Ultraviolet a heads up that this report was coming back and that their testing indicated that it was only an SPF of like 5. They got the batch number of the sunscreen that was tested. They got so that they could test the exact same batch because they were very confused. They sent it, they had it tested in their own labs. They sent it off to a third-party lab and it did not come back as an SPF of 5. It came back as the SPF of over 50 because most Australian sunscreens will test at a higher SPF level than what's actually on the bottle. That's one of the reasons they are known for having better sunscreens. So Choice then said, well, we'll retest it. So they sent the sunscreen off again to another lab, a third-party testing lab, and it came back again as an SPF of 5. Of course, this is devastating to a brand. So Ultraviolet, one of the founders, hopped on TikTok, which is where I found her, and let's watch part of her video right here.
Obviously, I've seen all of the press about the choice testing. The other thing that sunscreens have to do is go through a long stability process, about 6 months, depending on the country. We had our lean screen sitting in stability testing for 6 months in the exact same tube that we sell it in, for 6 months, in the same material, for 6 months before we were launching it. They did send it in an unlabeled container that was not the packaging that it had been stability tested in. One of the labs was in Germany. I don't know what happened on the journey to that lab. I don't know whether it was in extreme temperatures, heating or otherwise. I don't know how long it took to get there. I don't know what happened. Of all of the products on that list, the ones that fared the worst were mineral sunscreens. I don't know how any of them were sent in other labs. I don't know. But let's just talk about that for a second because I do think that's important. The level of zinc in Lean Screen is 22.75%. That is almost a quarter of the formula being zinc. All I'm just trying to communicate here is the rigor in which we test our products.
Her video, I think, is almost 9 minutes long on TikTok, so I'll link it below for you to watch the whole thing. But one of the things she brings up, she questions, is the fact that she points out that Choice removed the sunscreen from the original bottle because she said the Ultraviolet test their sunscreens to be shelf stable in the package that it comes in for 6 months. So that if there's any settling or anything, they could make sure that because you are supposed to shake them up because it's a mineral sunscreen, that you're still getting the SPF of 50 or whatever the SPF is on the outside of the bottle. And she says that Choice took the product out so that they could do what's called blind testing. They took the product out and then they mailed it off to their testing facility in Germany to test it. And she questions about the stability of the zinc oxide because if you'll notice in that report, the majority of all of the sunscreens that came back, and I looked through it, some of the brands I have never tried before because they're not available here in the States, but they all contain zinc in them. Those were the ones that did not meet the SPF number on the outside of the packaging. So her theory is that because zinc oxide has a lot of instability, that when either something occurred when they took it out or when they shipped it and it was out of the original packaging, that it became unstable. That messed with the formulation because sunscreens are formulated very precisely, which I think is a great point. Well, then what happened, I think it was yesterday, is Choice put out a little TikTok. All right, and here is that TikTok. Let's watch this one together.
Hello, my name is Mark Searles from Choice and I'm here to talk about sunscreens. In front of me right now I've got 20 sunscreens, all of which we've tested, and the news is not great. Out of the 20 sunscreens here in front of me, only 4 actually met their SPF claims, which is not ideal. One in particular, the Viollette Lean Screen, claims it has an SPF of 50 plus, but we tested it at an SPF of 4, which is not ideal. You could lather yourself in coconut oil and get more protection than you will from this. That being said, it's really important to note that Any sunscreen is better than no sunscreen. I've actually got this one at home right now. I use it every day of summer because I'm ginger and I get sunburnt easily, and I plan to use that until it runs out. And that should be your strategy as well. Like we always say here at Choice, any sunscreen is better than no sunscreen. That being said, we are now calling for more stringent testing of sunscreens here in Australia. We want to make sure that you guys and girls get the protection that you pay for. So if you want to find out more, head to choice.com.au and check it out. Cheers.
So many thoughts. I'm also noticing there's a Sunbum one in here, a very popular Sunbum that I actually do love. And I don't think that one's a mineral sunscreen. I'm pretty sure that one is a chemical one. I wonder how that one rates in their testing. And the one that he says, he holds up one, it's kind of off screen. It looks to me like it's a Nivea sunscreen that I have not tried, that he says he's going to continue to use and wear, even though it didn't pass the testing. I was watching Jen Love's live, and the shock and concern and awe on her face when he mentioned that it would be better to just rub coconut oil on your skin than to use the Viollette Lean Screen.
Which is not ideal. You could lather yourself in coconut oil and get more protection than...
What is this man? He said that out loud and they kept it in the video. I am just floored.
I know she's never going to watch this, but Jen, the same thoughts were running through my head. I was like, why did you use coconut oil as an example? Knowing that there are so many people out there who think it's okay that coconut oil will protect your skin, and they advocate for using coconut oil instead of sunscreen. Why in the world he chose to say that is beyond me. Even the sunscreen that's testing as a 4 is better than putting coconut oil on yourself, which is going to offer zero protection. Oh, and then the fact that he said he's still going to use the sunscreens, even though they didn't go up to the to the SPF that they claimed. That statement also bothers me, because if I found out that a sunscreen claimed SPF 50 and that it was only getting an SPF of 5, I would throw that sunscreen away. I'd be like, you just wear a t-shirt outside then. Like a white t-shirt. Isn't a white t-shirt like an SPF of 4 or 5? Just a plain white t-shirt? Why would you keep those? I don't understand that either. So Jen, you weren't the only one. All those same thoughts were going through my head. Not that she's ever going to see this, you guys. I've been watching Jen for years and years. Oh my goodness. I felt like the Choice's response to this wasn't good enough. They did also come out on their TikTok with a sunscreen Q&A where they talk about how they tested, which I think is helpful. They talk about how they are a nonprofit and that they don't make money on their testing. However, just like in the United States, brands can pay the consumer reports. They can pay to have on their product best of consumer reports recommended. They can pay to have that on there. Choice, is my understanding from watching another TikTok video, that they also offer that option, that brands can pay Choice to have that label, which is interesting. Is that nonprofit if you offer that service? They said they did in-house testing, but that they sent all of those sunscreens, all the 20 sunscreens, to an external laboratory for the testing. That they did use a panel of 10 adult volunteers. The volunteers must have skin types that show sunburning reactions and not have any sensitivities to the product's ingredients, which says to me they tested on my skin tone. They talk about how much they used in the area. They talk about how the lab is measuring the UV, the spectrum of sunlight exposure needed to create burning. I do need to point this out. It sounds to me like they only measured the burning rays, which is the UVB, and they haven't measured the UVA rays, which are the actual cancer-causing rays, right? Is that how you guys are reading this? That Choice only tested the effectiveness based off of burning. Is there a way to measure the cancer-causing rays? Is there a way, the UVA? I recommend sunscreens to you based off of like texture and how they feel on the face. And I never say to you, hey, I don't feel like this sunscreen prevented burning, because I do use other methods of protecting my skin. And I don't want to be a test subject because I've already had melanoma skin cancer. I'm not going to go out and do like a sunburn test for you guys of these sunscreens. So I can never measure the efficacy of a sunscreen, whether or not it prevents burning or not, simply because I use other. Sunscreen is just one of the many tools I have in my toolbox to protect my skin against the sun. Also, I'm not a chemist. Also, I'm not a medical professional, so I don't feel qualified to conduct those tests on myself. I'm also not willing to put myself in a compromising sunburning situation and potentially give my body more UV that could reignite my melanoma for everybody. So I too depend on brands telling the truth and running the testing. Now I did watch a couple of other TikTokers, some chemists, and I think there was a dermatologist in there, talk about maybe manufacturers can't be trusted. So even though the brands are getting the testing from the manufacturers, maybe the manufacturing place is not mixing the formulas correctly and could be lying to the brands and therefore to us consumers. And maybe that's why Choice tested lower. But that doesn't explain how Ultraviolet says that they sent their sunscreen that had that low rating. They sent it to a third party to be tested, and it still tested at the SPF 50 plus. Whereas Choice sent the same sunscreen to a third party lab and still got an SPF of 5. But the only difference I see there are they're using different third parties to test, but they're also, Choice is taking the product out of the original packaging, whereas Ultraviolet is leaving the sunscreen in the packaging and then testing it from the original packaging. What do you guys think?
What do I take away from it? So who was compliant with ISO regulations? Well, Choice has claimed to be compliant with ISO regulations, but that's not verified. Also, decanting the product could likely invalidate their compliance. Ultraviolet, we know that they were compliant because they provided the lab reports. The test sample, now that if it was decanted, that could affect the emulsion, the dispersion, and also the SPF outcome. Whereas Ultraviolet, they provided their testing using the original packaging. SPF panel size, well, Choice have advised that they used 10 in their first test, which is compliant, 3 in their second test, which is not compliant. Why this is important is because Choice did make a statement saying that they were compliant with ISO. The second test is not compliant. Also, this is not validated. We can't validate that they used 10 people. Ultraviolet, we know that they used 10 people because it's in their report that they have provided. Lab transparency, so Choice has provided no details about the labs that they have used, so we have no validation on that. Ultraviolet, we know because they've provided the report. TGA accredited labs, well, we don't know because we don't know the labs that Choice have used. Ultraviolet, we know it's a TGA accredited lab because they've provided it to us. So the result produced with Choice was 4, Ultraviolet was 61.7. So there's still a lot of question marks around Choice. And I guess, who do you trust? Do you trust the person that's just making statements, or do you trust the person that's coming with receipts?
How is this going to affect the sunscreen community and sunscreen conversations? Is this going to make more people fear sunscreens? I think it will. If people in the EU are looking at Choice as people in the States look at consumer reports to buy products, I think it's just going to further create doubt in people who are learning that they need to protect their children and their bodies from UV, but it's going to create more doubt for all sunscreen brands, right? What do you think? One of the people that I immediately went to, besides Michelle off of Lab Muffin Beauty Science, and like I said, I'll link her Instagram. I'll link it down below, where she talks about the intricacies, the sunscreen testing that happens that I do not understand. It's way above my head. And she breaks it down better. So definitely go watch that. But I also went to Dr. Julian Sass. He put up a statement on Instagram that says the founders at Ultraviolet are his personal friends. So he knows he already has a bias. So I'm curious to see if he will release more. But from his statement here, it sounds like he too agrees that there's more going on to the choice testing and testing of sunscreens in general that is complicated. He does not think that Ultraviolet is intentionally trying to scam its customers, which I find comfort in, knowing that he trusts them. He also says that because of this report, there will be more testing that has to be done. He says that the FDA here in the States will be retesting ultraviolet sunscreens and others on this list, whether it's bogus or whether it's accurate. There will be more testing that occurs, and that will be good in the long run for consumers, which I tend to agree with. What do we do now? What do we do with this information, y'all? I think y'all knew I didn't like these to begin with. I do not like the formulas they have here in the States at all. What I'm going to continue doing for myself is I don't rely 100% on sunscreen. I wear hats. I wear UV clothing. Coolie Bar, one of my favorite clothing brands for UV clothing that's comfortable to wear in the summer. It's comfortable for in the hot weather. It's got zinc woven through the fabric. Popping up Melanoma Mom 20 discount code. Save 20% off of Coolie Bar on their website. Highly recommend. I don't make any money from that code. That's just to save you all money. It's not an affiliate code. I'm just sharing it with you guys because don't pay full price. Pick you up a discount. I reduce my time in direct sunlight when I go outside. There are a multitude of ways that I protect my skin that isn't solely reliant on sunscreen. Do I think that we should just not purchase sunscreen and not bother wearing it if it's not effective? No, I don't think that's it. I can say that sunscreen is effective for me. I notice that I don't get burned on my face when I wear sunscreen. That sunburn one that was in there, that one confuses me. Where was that one on their list? I screenshotted that. Let me look that up. That one I have been using for years and I do find is effective. Okay, so it's an SPF of 50. It's their premium moisturizing sunscreen lotion SPF 50+. Now that one is an all chemical sunscreen, I know for sure. And they said it rated in the 40s rather than an SPF of 50. Okay, that one doesn't bother me too much. Yes, there's a 10 difference, but if you're reapplying sunscreen every 2 hours, that's also going to help cover that. And also, the recommendation is to wear a sunscreen that is at least an SPF of 30. There may be a part 2 of this. There may not be a part 2. I don't know. I'm going to keep watching and see if anybody else comes out with anything talking about Sunscreen Gate. If I see any more responses from Choice or any other sunscreen brands, let me know what you think below. I want to hear all your thoughts. Y'all always have good responses and conversation about sunscreen. I want to hear it below.